June 24th, 2024, Julian Assange emerged from Belmarsh maximum security in the UK after having spent 1,901 days there, granted bail by the High Court in London, released at Stansted Airport. Then he flew off to the Northern Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory about 2,000 miles north of Australia, where he entered a guilty plea on one espionage charge and basically was given a 5-year sentence, but the judge said time has been served, and so off he flew to Australia to be reunited with his wife and 2 children. And this incredible story is now available in a terrific documentary. I've just finished screening it. It's called The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, the story of a man who risked everything to bring the truth to light.
This is generally the view of people. Oh, we don't know much about Assange. Well, you should know, because whether you know it or not, he is fighting for you.
For your courage and leadership and tenacity in journalism and publishing.
Since 2010, Assange has been held in progressively narrower, darker, colder, and crueler spaces.
He has been detained since the 7th of December 2010 in one form or another.
And we are now here after years of imprisonment.
WikiLeaks is a non-state hostile intelligence service.
I think the man is a high-tech terrorist.
A high-tech terrorist.
A traitor, a treasonous.
He has to answer for what he has done.
Assange faces up to 175 years in prison for publishing classified documents exposing U.S. war crimes.
The U.S. government narrative about Julian is a complete fraud. It is a complete fraud from A to Z.
Julian took on the most powerful countries in the world, basically all of them.
We now have confirmed that there were plans to kidnap Julian here in the center of London, or even assassinate him.
No one who instigated that illegal and immoral war has been brought to justice. But the great truth teller sits behind bars.
If wars can be started by lies, peace can be started by truth.
Julian Assange is a hero.
What if everything we thought we knew about somebody was a lie? Would we be willing to go on a new journey of understanding? This is a story of deception, lies, bravery, and a man who risked everything to bring the truth to light.
Mr. Assange shows all the symptoms that are typical for a person that has been exposed to psychological torture over a prolonged period of time.
He looked at me intensely and said, "I hate to say this." He then hesitated, visibly troubled and searching for words. And then he finally said, "Please, save my life."
May future generations have the ability to speak without restraint. May our children and their children know truth and have access to information that leads to justice. Wherever Julian goes, free speech goes with him.
If there is a bird that is about to take flight, stretch her wings and rule the skies, may it be a peace dove and no longer a bald eagle.
If you think Assange is a traitor, he's a rapist, he's a narcissist, he's a hacker, I don't blame you, because you have been deceived. And if you think you've not been deceived, that's normal, because otherwise it wouldn't be deception.
And the filmmaker responsible joins me now. Kimston is a poet, musician from New South Wales, Australia. He's the writer-director of The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, and the founder and director of Films for Change. He won an award for Best Emerging Director, Australia, at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in 2023. The Trust Fall was released in cinemas in December 2023 and has been shown at more than 350 cinemas across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. with more than 2,000 sessions and over 50,000 people viewing the film in cinemas so far. It is the most watched Australian documentary of the year in cinemas worldwide. The Trust Fall releases in the United States on the 18th of July, 2024. Kim, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me.
First of all, did I pronounce your last name correctly? Is it Staten?
That's correct, yeah.
All right. So the film obviously concludes before his release in 2024, June of 2024. And we'll come around to talking about his release. But I want to go back to his early days because, quite frankly, I didn't know a lot about Julian Assange prior to his founding WikiLeaks, I think around 2006. Interesting educational background. Computer programming, mathematics, physics. That's not the type of background you would expect for someone who would end up being a journalist and a truth seeker. How did that all happen?
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting to note that he attended the University of Melbourne in Australia, studying maths and science and computer science, physics, as a mature age student. And before that, he had a successful career in encryption. So he was an encryption consultant and had success in that allowed him to attend university and pay his own way and not have to work. He had a residual income of some sort from, I'm not sure if it was software or just from his consulting that he'd done previously. So he didn't go to university as sort of fresh out of high school, but had a career before that. So he's around the age of 30 when he went to when he enrolled at University of Melbourne, but obviously incredibly bright. And his friend Niraj Lal, the scientist that attended university with him that we interviewed for the Trustful, commented in that interview that Julian sort of was way ahead of his classes and even ahead of the lecturers. He also mentioned that Julian was chosen for various competitions, physics and maths competitions. And so he was very much, amongst the brightest of the university, and that's one of the top universities. So you could probably be fair to say one of the brightest young adults in Australia at that time in the field of computer science. He'd also been an ethical hacker. He was notorious for that, and his achievements included assisting the Victorian police to crack down 2 different pedophile rings in Australia using his hacking skills. So he had that background, and then went to uni to challenge himself, and it was at that time that he came up with this incredible invention, the WikiLeaks technology, the anonymous Dropbox, accompanied by a website that couldn't be demolished, destroyed, a website that had multiple servers, multiple copies, which still exists and stands to this day with this collection of 10 million incredible documents.
Right. There's a line near the very end of the film that I think sums it up beautifully, what his legacy is, and that is he created a library that cannot be burned.
Yeah, that's right. It's the WikiLeaks website it's a rebel library of Alexandria. It's a digital library. It harnesses this ability of the internet and the digital world to store data for little to no cost and transfer it. And so part of this invention was that the website couldn't be destroyed. Of course, it was going to be under attack because it exposes basically every country in the world with corruption and crimes of various kinds. And so he knew it was going to come under attack. They'd try to bring it down. And so he came up with, the idea of having multiple servers, multiple copies. And when it does go down, which is pretty frequent, from what I've seen, you often go there and it's you get a 404 error, and then a few days later it pops up again because someone else there's multiple copies of the entire library, and they can just put it back up from another server pretty quickly. So thus far, it's 14 years and or 18 years even, they still haven't found a way to get rid of it. And so it does seem like a permanent library that we can all use as a resource.
So let's talk about some of the famous leaks that have been published by WikiLeaks. Starting around 2010, we had the classified material about American military activity in Iraq and Afghanistan. And maybe as we go through these, maybe you could just give us some broad brush strokes about what they revealed and why they're significant. Could we start with the military, the dump on the military activity in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2010?
Yeah, 2010 was when the WikiLeaks basically for the first time started to expose US information, classified documents out of the US. So the Afghan war logs and the Iraq war logs, and Cablegate, which was the DNC emails. Also, the other the Guantanamo Bay files was also huge, exposing the torture of the US on children as young as 14 and as old as 89 years old. Hundreds of detainees at Guantanamo Bay that were just suspects of terrorism. They hadn't even been found guilty of it. They were just being held and tortured, even though Obama and the US government had claimed that they no longer tortured people. It was obvious that they were. And that was a shocking expose. The Afghan war logs revealed hundreds of excess deaths, and then the Iraq war logs even more so, 15,000 excess deaths, more than 9/11, just as a comparison of scale and how significant that would be to Middle Eastern people. And then there was many things that we learned from the DNC, the Cablegate release, disclosure, as it's called, including, that Hillary Clinton was taking bribes from Saudi Arabia worth millions of dollars, the Podesta emails, which are, whipped up that whole Pizzagate theory, which is quite dark and scary if you take the time to look into it.
Right, suggesting that there was some kind of high-level organized pedophile ring going on, being run out of this pizza restaurant, which in that one specific case may not have been true, but I think it was Rolling Stone magazine once said, this individual story was wrong, but the narrative is correct. I just wanted to back up to the Iraq-Afghanistan leak, because it wasn't too long after that, a few months maybe. I think that was in April of 2010. And then in August, we had Sweden, the Swedish police questioning Assange about two separate charges of, supposed rape and molestation, although we learned that had nothing to do with what that investigation was about. I mean, the timing there was kind of interesting. Do you think, I ask somewhat rhetorically, whether that was coincidental that the Swedish police would start investigating him for these rape and molestation accusations?
Yeah, well, there's various books and videos and articles that delve deeply into these Swedish allegations, and we brush on it briefly in the film just to basically swiftly debunk it, that people can go and look further into that if they wish. And but the basic summary of it is as you say, the timing is very opportune for the US, in that Julian is putting out all these damning documents, this powerful stuff with the Iraq and Afghan war logs, Cablegate, the DNC files and Guantanamo Bay files. It's all coming out, and I think they really. My impression is that they seized upon this opportunity. Somebody in the Swedish the Stockholm police station definitely had political ties, into the political world, connecting back to the US. Also, one of the two women has also been traced back to having political connections. And, my interpretation is that, the two women went to the police to get assistance to convince Julian to take an STI test. It was simply that. And then it got from there, they were manipulated. The women became victims as well. And they've both said that they feel victimized, that they were horrified that it was turned into something else. So it was a combination of, collusion between, members of that Stockholm police station with their political contacts, linking back to the US, combined with the mainstream media that just put it over the front pages of every newspaper around the world overnight, and somehow got access to what should have been a private interview. So there's a lot of illegality there on the way that interview was corrupted. And Niels Melzer's book, I should mention, The Trial of Julian Assange, delves deeply into those the documents that were uncovered by FOI requests from journalist Stefania Marizzi. What Niels Melzer uncovers in his book is more than 50 violations of due process on the side of the Swedish prosecution and the UK Crown prosecution, and then it was turned into something to create a legal paralysis. That they tried to use it to get Julian into Swedish custody so that he could presumably be handed over to the US. And that was why he had to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian Embassy of London for nearly 7 years, was to not get into custody and passed over into the hands of American prosecution.
Kim Staten is with us, filmmaker, poet, musician, writer, director of The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, and we'll tell you how you can watch it and where. Let's just talk about the perhaps the most damning leak, if you will, and that was the video that was titled the Collateral Murder. This was an Apache helicopter in the U.S. firing on, we're led to believe that these were armed insurgents, I guess, in Iraq. It turns out that they were working for the Associated Press, I believe. We were told that they were armed. They were actually just carrying cameras, and they were shot to pieces. And then we see a van comes to collect the bodies or to take them to the hospital, and that van is struck with gunfire from the helicopter. Just a horrendous incident. That seemed to be sort of the proverbial nail in the coffin for Julian Assange in terms of his persecution. Talk to me about how that video came into his possession and why it is so significant.
Yeah, the incident, the release is called Collateral Murder. The incident happened in 2007 in New Baghdad, Iraq, during the Iraq War. And it was an American Apache helicopter shooting down the 12 people, including 2 Reuters journalists. And then a van pulling up a father with 2 children in the van, just civilians, coming along the road and trying to help. And then, the rain of bullets kills the father. The children survive because the father threw his body over them. And so, a horrendous, awful incident, just sickening. I saw that in 2010, like a lot of people. It's amazing that there's still people that have not seen that footage. It'd be interesting to know how many people have not seen it in this day and age, 14 years after it came out. But that's the case. We've been showing this film in cinemas and people it's probably more than half the audience never seen it. So they're seeing it for the first time on the big screen. It makes it even more heavy. It feels very real. So basically it was Chelsea Manning, who at the time was Bradley Manning, was working in the US Army as an analyst. She had access to this information and these documents, and like any whistleblower, couldn't let it slide. When somebody has strong ethics and morals and feels something is wrong, and it's going to nag you for days and weeks and months, and then she finally decided to share it with WikiLeaks anonymously. She ended up being convicted. I think she was in jail for 6 years, I believe, before her sentence was commuted, which is it's not a pardon, but it's basically like a suspension of the sentence, commuted by Obama, and whereas they kept pursuing Julian. That footage, that video, it's sort of like the modern day equivalent of the napalm image from napalm girl image from the Vietnam War, in its significance.
Or the My Lai massacre.
Yeah, that's right. The naked girl walking down the road, running away from burned villages. This video it's so powerful. I think it's only now being sort of matched by this gruesome, shocking video coming out of Gaza that we're seeing like on X, nearly every other day. But in 2010, it was this incredible, powerful and horrifying insight into modern war. It was not just the visuals, but the attitudes of the soldiers laughing, swearing and joking around as if they're playing a video game, and the impression that anyone really could take from their commentary, their dialogue in that video, is that it's something that they do every day. And so this was just a little slice of time, a little small window into, as Julian has said in interviews, it's the little things that happen every day that add up. And so those 15,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq War is just incident after incident involving just one or two people. And that's what the Iraq War logs showed us. I looked at those logs, and it's just, each day there's numbers of entries, and it's just very brief little summary of incidents, checkpoint, somebody was hit by stray bullets, or a car bomb, or a US bombing caused a house to collapse and 5 people inside, and just incident after incident created this harrowing figure of 15,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq War. So, yeah, I think that video, as well as the Vault 7 release, which was, under Mike Pompeo, the biggest exposure of the CIA that had ever occurred,
and how they were spying on American citizens.
Yeah, that's right. Spying on American citizens through smartphones, televisions, even through cars, through the systems in these various devices, and spying on people that not necessarily guilty of anything, just that they might have some connection to someone else, guilty of something. And so the combination of all of these different disclosures, it was freaking out all sides of the US government, CIA through to the DOJ, through to Hillary Clinton, angry at Assange for putting out her emails and for apparently causing her to lose the election. And so he just accumulated so many opponents, and then they went after him, and under Trump, under the CIA, under Mike Pompeo, started sketching up ideas of how that they could assassinate him, and from poisoning him in the embassy through to sort of letting him escape momentarily and then having a street showdown, a shootout on the street. That was exposed by a Yahoo article revealing, statements from dozens of officials, former US officials, a couple of years ago. So, there was definitely this incredible plot all the way back from 2008, actually, before the big US releases. The US already was starting to get advice on, they saw WikiLeaks was going to be a threat to their unbridled power, and were looking for advice on how to undermine and destroy them.